I called Jason Blum and I said, I'm sending you a link. I want to buy this book, and I believe it'll be the most important thing either one of us does in the movie business. And he agreed.
It's not too late.
You're trying to put on a brave face for children. All of this horror that you're trying to take in and communicate to an audience has to be in some way put on a brave face for these children.
You know, I had the chance to speak to Mary, the teacher who was actually on the bus. And one of the first things she said to me was about the mask that she felt she had to put on to be for the kids what she thought they needed from her, but also everything that was going on internally. She had her own 2 kids somewhere out in the town, couldn't communicate with them, didn't know if they were safe. But for her, she had a job to perform, which was to protect these children, and not just physically. She talked about the responsibility she felt to try to mitigate the emotional trauma, to try to, you know, they sang to them, they played games with them. So here's, you know, this woman with all her own stuff going on inside who is finding a way to repress that to try to help these kids get through this terrible event. However, you know, and this is where Paul was so clear that we were not doing a biographical film. We were telling a story and creating our on-screen characters. He was so clear that he really needed to see that mask come off. You know, that as the stakes got higher and higher, he's like, I need her to lose it. I need her to lose the mask, and we need to see that she is just a person underneath there. And that was sort of the chemistry of like, how much can she wear the mask and how much is she just a human who's gonna break?
Do you have any safety protocols on this bus?
Yep, you got that.
Great, yeah, that'll make all the difference.
It's so many people that it affects, but you find this really interesting perspective with the children and the bus and the driver and the teacher. Why was that
was
focal point?
Because that was the story.
Yeah.
So I was home alone reading the Washington Post. There was an article about the book, Paradise, and a sidebar was the story of Kevin McKay and Mary Ludwig, the school bus driver and the teacher. And I said to my husband out loud, I was like, oh, well, that's the movie. And I called Jason Blum and I said, I'm sending you a link. I want to buy this book, and I believe it'll be the most important thing either one of us does in the movie business. And he agreed.
Wow.
And Brad Inglesby came on as a writer on spec because he understood the importance of the story, and that's how it began. And then Paul Greengrass was the #1 director on my list. I had 2 names. Paul was #1.
I'm too late as a father.
Talk to me about the actual on-set experience, because this has some of the most amazing fire effects I've ever seen in a film. Like, what were you looking at? What was the set like?
We had a lot of practical to deal with.
Yeah.
There were many ways to have gotten burned or injured. It didn't feel that dangerous because we would rehearse and choreograph the moves and call out the timing. And we had a pro team. The timing and the stunts had to be like this, and there were multiple, and many of them. Over 100 per run even. And you know, they'd be prepping that for weeks before, and then we'd get there on the day, we'd walk through it, we'd slowly drive through it, we're calling out the spots, swerve left here, gotta swerve right, power line falls. And so you call on these things out, and then you get up to speed, you rehearse 3 times, boom, it's magic hour. You got about 1 hour and 15 minutes, and you get about 3 takes. And as America said, the first one's usually a little bit too bright, the last one's a little too dark, the middle one's usually the one you used. And you get your 3 takes, that's a night, folks. Come back tomorrow morning, not that same bus, but a bus will be on a gimbal inside a studio. And on that gimbal, it's surrounded by a dome of lights that are programmed to give you the same light as we had last night in the exterior.
Interesting.
So now we're shooting the interiors, the intimate stuff, and now we put the kids on the bus and go back and shoot those scenes. Because it's too dangerous to have the kids on the bus outside in the practicals.
You have 22 kids on the bus. You can't take very many chances.
Yeah.
Quietly, calmly, one single line. Do you know all of us are gonna be there? It's gonna take 10 minutes.
My job as a producer, really, besides just being the headwaters of the project creatively, was to be the bridge between Mary and Kevin, who I got to know. And Mary was much more hesitant about me calling to say, you know, we're gonna make a movie. And she was very guarded, and I understood why. And she said, well, you know, we have a strange connection. I said, really, what? She said, your mother dated my father.
Really?
And I said, where? She said, in Merced, California. I said, yeah, that's where my mother was raised. So when my mother, Janet Leigh, who has got a lot of credits on your IMDb, was still Jeanette Helen Morrison from Merced, California, she dated Mary Ludwig's father, who was a Marine. And Mary said, you know, I only saw my father cry twice. The first was the day my mother died, and the second was the day your mother died, she said to me. So here I now am the bridge between these real people who survived this horrific experience. And I'm now the movie producer who's saying, please trust me.
Right.
And so it created a level of trust between us that has carried over to today. We are dear friends now, but that was really my job as a producer, besides my suggestion of America in a Zoom when Paul Greengrass was saying, okay, because Matthew McConaughey had agreed to be in the movie and we were all excited. And so then he said, well, who's gonna play Mary? And I went, what about America Ferrera? And he went, oh, I love her. Yes, yes, let's do it. And that's how quickly that came together.